All right, we finally got the GS300 out and we got the 350Z in. We actually got to change the wheels on it. Those wheels actually, part of the deal was he keeps his wheels and he gave me a factory set of wheels, which will need tires, but it's $1,000 cheaper and I don't really like the wheels. So we got the factory wheels. You can see those, I'll show those to you. So it's just some factory wheels on it. And that's the ones we're taking off. This car's kind of beat up, but it's going to be a drift rig, so it don't matter. It's not perfect. It's got a little primer, a little Bondo. I think it'll be okay though for what we're going to do with it. All right, we got the wheels off the 350Z. What we're actually going to do, we're having an issue. The reason I got the car, I think the slave cylinder's leaking or the master cylinder's bad, but we went ahead and bought the Wilwood stuff. You may have seen that already. But the first thing you do when you start this setup is, if you're going to put the Wilwood on, right here is this cover and this latch. Take that off. All right, here's your actual reservoir for the clutch, but the actual piece that's going to come off is down here. Your slave will actually live down in that department. So, but we're going to take the cap off the reservoir, and the reason we're going to take the cap off is because when we actually replace the master cylinder down there, well, we're going to break the slave cylinder bleeder and we'll let all that drain out, get the old fluid out. It actually doesn't look bad, but I think it's been using it or leaking it or something. But we're going to drain all the old stuff out, pull all this apart, and end up replacing everything minus the reservoir itself. But that's the first thing you do, is pull the lid off. Then you're gonna have to lift the car up or get under the car and loosen the fitting on the actual slave cylinder. All right, so what you're gonna do is a little fitting, if I can get my hand right there, and you're going to loosen that. An 8mm or a 5/16 will work, either one. It may be stopped up, you may have to take it all the way out. And there may not be nothing in it. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and just pull it all off. It should drain out this line, at least. So we get it started draining. Oh. We can actually take it loose. It should gravity drain all of the fluid out from up high. Which it's not, so that may be part of the issue with the master cylinder. We'll go ahead and pull the slave off. And this thing was wet, so it might have been leaking already. We might have had an issue with our slave cylinder. But I think the 350s are bad about the master cylinders having issues too. Okay, so I got that out, and this thing should actually be draining, with, especially with the lid off. Maybe some blockage in it. It may be part of the issue, or that master's bad itself. So, but either way, we got our old one off. All right, so while we're here, we're gonna go ahead and replace the slave cylinder while we're right here on this. We will have to come back to this end once we do the actual line, when we change the line out. And we'll have to run the line, we'll have to bleed it and everything. But while we're right here, we can go ahead and put our slave on. It's pretty simple. The bolt that goes in this line that actually hooks here, we're not going to use that. We're actually going to, the line feeds straight in when it comes back. So when we bring our new aftermarket line in, our Z1 Performance, it will actually hook in itself. So we won't have to keep that bolt for the purposes of this one. Remember now, this stuff, you're actually going into an aluminum housing transmission, so you don't want to get crazy tight on these things. All right, and that's where we'll bleed it from once we get the actual line in. But it's not draining any fluid, so there may be an issue with that master as well. We may have two problems on that setup, but that part's in. All right, well, it appears that either the master itself is bad or the line stopped up or something, but I think the slave was bad too. So you got two 10mm holding the reservoir on. One on top, one directly under it. So you have to take those deals off. Now we want to do this end. All right. So it has one 10mm nut and lock washer on the reservoir bolts. So two lock washers and two 10mm nuts so far. And you try not to drop them if you can help them. And then you got two flat washers, one on each stud behind the lock washer. I'm gonna end up dropping this one, I think. Nope. All right, now we gotta find something to dump our fluid in. All right, so you can take one of your favorite beverage containers and cut the lid off, or cut the top off. You wanna keep your lid on. You can actually, you can see here, that way you get your fluid. We're going to trash this, even though it looks clean and everything, but I'm actually going to put a .4 in it, the new stuff we bought. All right, so see that clamp? On the other side, there's a clamp on the other end of the hose. So I'm just going to reach down, I'm going to take it loose from down here if I can get to it. Maybe, I think I had it, but come on now. Definitely limited on room down here. All right, so I back the there's some in the line, but there's the clamp, and that's your rubber piece that goes down, and you'll reuse this and you'll reuse the reservoir. And you definitely want to clean your reservoir and your top piece, the hose, actually, you want to clean all that out. And so what we're looking at down here is right there. That's what we're taking out, and we'll take a wrench and we'll turn that line loose. We're actually going to replace the hard line. It runs from there down to right in there. So we're going to replace that, so that'll be part of it too. And this line you're looking at right on the back of it, that's a 10mm, and a 10mm wrench will fit right down in there, no problem. So it's actually not that hard to get to. All right, your 10mm line's out, and that's what it should look like. All right, so the clutch line actually runs inside here, down and back. So we have to take the fender liner out on the driver's side to get the rest of that clutch line out. All right, so what you have in here is, let's see if I can get you. All right, there's some Phillips screws up this way, all the way up through here, and all the way around this rim to here, all the way down, and usually there's some clips somewhere. All right, and on some of these clips, if I can get you in there, you end up having to get something like this. It's got an angle, in an opening, and you got to pop some of these things out because they get wedged in there and somebody's tried to pull them out by hand. And on these, you actually can take your little green tool if you can get in there. And sometimes you end up using a flat screwdriver, which that's probably what I'll do. And you get right under that lip and you just need to pop up and it'll fall right out. And somebody stuck their own little version of a screw in there, I think. You know what size that thing is. Alright, so when you pull your cover off, this is what you're looking at. Your line comes down up top. So your line actually comes in right there. There's a little rubber grommet, and it comes down this way. And there's a pressure valve or a one-way valve where it doesn't bleed back or whatever. But what I do is I, myself, will actually, before I pull it off, I'll actually break the lines loose before I do any of that stuff. There we go. So I will actually take my lines loose before I turn this stuff loose. Here we go. I will actually undo the lines, because if you don't undo your lines first, you'll end up not being able to turn them because this piece won't be solid and mounted. So once you get that loose, you actually got a bolt down here and 2 bolts here, and you actually use these as your mounting locations for your new line that comes with the Wilwood kit. All right, so we got our differences in our master cylinders. We got to get our length right on our ends here. It hooks onto the pedal. All right, we're ready to install. All right, so you take these 2 nuts off. And then this bolt down here, which you can't see it from there, but there's a bolt right here. All right, so we pull this down, and this actually comes through the top here, and I may have to let it down, but this piece pulls out, and this bottom one comes out from underneath the car. All right, there's a 10mm right there. We got to undo it, and there's a clip right here that will actually push out, but we need to turn that loose right here first before we pull that clip out. All right, so there's the finished product with the new line in. And if you'll notice, I turned it to the side so that way I can still get to my bleeder. So that's what it should look like, something like that. There's your bleeder. And I kicked the line to the side so you can still get to your bleeder with no problem. There we go. All right, so we got the line going in behind the lower control arm right here. And it goes up and it hits the old spot of where your original line was bolted to. Then I used those 2. I hooked onto the bottom one, and then we go right up into the old location. I've got a rubber grommet I'll put around that once we get the car back down. So we've got all that in, and we'll reinstall the reservoir and the line up top. All right, so that right there is what you're looking for. You can see, it's hard to see, but what you got, this blue fitting here, the end of it, that's where you'll rehook your reservoir line back up to. And the black line here, that's where your actual clutch line is. And it runs back over and goes down to the bottom where you've seen it down there. So that's what the top will look like once you get that point. All right, so we got the reservoir in, got it buttoned up. Now, we're gonna put the special sauce on there. This stuff's, I think, like $20 a quart or something. So let's spill it all over the place if we can. All right, so what we'll do now is we'll lift the car up, break the bleeder loose, let it gravity drain for a minute, and we'll get this jewel started bleeding here soon. All right, so we're at their clutch pedal. So you see your clutch pedal, and you follow it up, all the way up here. It's hard to tell. All right, but once you get up to, let's see if I can get you focused here. All right, that little keeper right there, you pull that little keeper out, and then you knock that pin backwards and you pull it out, and that's how you let the end of the master cylinder go. And then there's 2 bolts, if I can show you. There's one, let's see. All right, so there's the pedal, follow the pedal. There's one back there, if you can see that one. Try to get a light on it. All right, there's one in there, back there. All right, so once you get that one, you got the other one, which is up right there. If I can get you a light in there. It's hard to see, but you got, I'm trying. So that keeper, so you take that clip out, push that pin out. One bolt right there. And on top, you got, there it is, the other bolt. You take those 2 bolts out, that one, the one behind there, all the way down in there, that one. Take that pin out right there, or that keeper, push the pin out, and that master will slide straight out. So you do the exact opposite, so you'll push it back in when you get done, put your new one in, start your bolts, and get your bolts in, and then you'll have to adjust that rod on the end to get it where you need it. So once you get it adjusted in, is take your 2 bolts, tighten them up, and you'll may have to pull it out and adjust it a few times to get it just right. Once you get it adjusted just right, then you can put your pin and your keeper back in. But that bolt, one on the back down in there, and if you're having issues with the pedal and it doesn't have any resistance for a little ways, that's possibly what your problem is. It tends to be that. That's what this one was. We changed the master, the slave, and the line with the Wilwood setup, and it took a minute to bleed it. But yeah, you'll have to spin that rod at that end on the rod a couple times, and then there's a nut right behind the back of that, and you actually tighten it down to keep that, tight or whatever. So that's it. I mean, that's the inside part. That's the only components you have to actually work on. But you may have to push it in and out a couple times and spin that end right there a time or two. Once you spin that end a time or two, you'll be able to adjust your height to your pedal. So what you'll look at is your height in relationship to your brake pedal. I like mine a little higher because if you're going to do any drifting and you go to clutch kick, I like to have it right there on top so we can get to it pretty easy. But yeah, you do adjust it according to the height of your pedals. And if it goes lower than your brake and you doesn't like that, or you don't like how it's got slack in it, you can twist that just a little bit and adjust it. So you do have some adjustment in that end. So but yeah, that's all that's on the inside. It should be pretty easy. It's it looks harder than what it actually is, and it can be a little painstaking having to pull the master out and put it back in a couple times to get it adjusted. So it does help to have an extra hand to kind of move it back and forth on the front side while you're adjusting it inside to, you know, get it just right, because you'll have to keep going back and forth and trying to get it just where you want it. But I did actually have help for a minute there, and it made it a lot easier than getting out of the car, getting back in the car, getting out of the car, and, you know, adjusting it, pushing the master cylinder back out each time, to having to adjust it. So if you got an extra hand, it doesn't take a lot of knowledge, just somebody to understand what you're trying to do, and they can help you pretty good on that. So that's pretty much it on the inside. All right, guys, that's our video for today. Follow us on Instagram at Chesser Enterprises. On this YouTube channel, if you will hit the like button and subscribe, check all that out, and you'll see the little bell on there. If you click the bell, you'll get to see all of our videos, and that way it'll actually alert you every time we post something. That way you can watch us as it happens. All right, thanks guys, appreciate you.